Well, hey guys, I'm Aaron Lancaster.
Hi, Aaron.
How are you guys today?
Love to Aaron.
I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I work for a company over there, actually headquartered out of Birmingham, Alabama, called TechLinks. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some things that we're seeing, trends around crypto malware, specifically with Cryptolocker. So for those of you who don't know about TechLinks, TechLinks is a managed service provider and value-added reseller, and basically,
Microphone.
oh, okay. And I guess I'm supposed to use this microphone.
There you go.
So TechLinks, managed service provider, value-added reseller. But we service a lot of customers, small, medium businesses, all the way up to enterprise space, and have seen a lot of those folks impacted by Cryptolocker, and so we're going to get a little bit more into that. So how many of you guys have heard of Cryptolocker before? Maybe it's better to ask who's not heard of Cryptolocker before. It's okay, don't be shy. How many people have actually had Cryptolocker on their machine? Anybody in here? Awesome. Yes.
But for reverse purposes.
Come back around to you a little bit later.
Not my machine, but a company machine.
Company machine. All right, good.
What about machines we deliberately infected? What about machines we deliberately infected?
Machines you deliberately infected count. Those are in scope for this discussion.
Counted for.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I just want to, first and foremost, I want to keep this. Someone asked earlier, is this a serious conversation, or are we going to keep this lighthearted?
That was me.
I just want to. I'd like to keep this conversational, actually. So, and I love stories. I think there's a lot of value in stories, especially in a lot of the work we do. Experience is worth a lot, right? So, so I want to come back to some of those stories about whether you intentionally or unintentionally infected a machine with Cryptolocker. But earlier this year, the FBI came out and they said, hey, Cryptolocker and its variants are a significant threat, and have been, since September of 2012. And it's been actively targeting U.S. victims since April 14, and the financial impact is really high. So we're just making you, consumer, aware of this. Be on your guard. But in true government fashion, didn't really give us all that much to go on there about how to guard against this, right? So in case you're maybe more or less familiar with what Cryptolocker is. Cryptolocker is a ransomware that encrypts your files and holds them for ransom. Plain and simple. So it actually has its own taxonomy, its own category called crypto malware. And Cryptolocker really came on the scene in September of 2013. No one really knows how long the development cycle was, prior to that, how long that was brewing before the first infections really started. But the earliest recorded infections of Cryptolocker started around that time. Of course, this targets mainly Windows boxes, and based on everything that we're seeing with the way that this threat's been evolving and advancing and becoming more complex, I personally wouldn't be surprised if within a couple of years we don't see this move into the Mac OS X space or even into the Linux space. So usually the first thing that people see is the ransom note demanding $500 or more in Bitcoin. And it gives you, a timer of 72, 96 hours to pay up the ransom, or the keys to your data will be deleted. Theoretically, once you send the payment, it's verified, the program will decrypt the files that it's already encrypted. Some of the newer threats that are out there, the newer versions that are out there, will actually decrypt one file for you for free as a proof of concept to say, yeah, we're actually gonna, because what they're trying to prove is the value proposition, right? Like, if I pay you this money, are you actually gonna decrypt my data, right? So they're trying to prove, yeah, we've got the private key, we'll decrypt it, once you pay us. So the real problem with this comes in where this malware goes after everything, right? Here's a little quote that talks about technician in the field and what he's experienced, with hitting MP3s, Word docs, using a 2048 RSA key, and then potentially spreading from a home PC to a work network through VPN access. Here's some numbers about Cryptolocker and over the years. So in 2014, Cryptolocker was infecting over 50,000 computers per month at its peak, with over 336 computers in the U.S. alone, which the U.S. is the #1 market for Cryptolocker infections. So this relatively targeted attack based on the distribution worldwide. And interestingly enough, Google search results are well over 210,000 searches per month for Cryptolocker as a term. Yeah.
You've said twice that it targets U.S. By what methodology does it do that, and does it really accomplish that?
That's a really good question, and I think that that's probably mainly based on domain name resolution, and where the phishing, which is the #1 mode of delivery, is, .com addresses are being targeted, right? So it's not .aus, it's not .ru, it's not, so those addresses are going to fall, I think, and that's probably where a lot of that correlation comes from. It's from the .coms. Now, granted, many .coms fall outside of U.S. territory, but by and far, most of them are U.S. names. So we'll come back to phishing statistics in a little bit too, and infection vectors. But I think the statistic about the search results for Cryptolocker is really telling, because if you think about it, you're not out there doing searches for Cryptolocker on Google unless you're a security researcher or you actually have a problem that you're trying to fix, right? Nobody's out there like Googling Cryptolocker just to see if they can, get Cryptolocker, for example. So the percentage of people who are out there looking for information about Cryptolocker when they don't have a problem associated with that, I think statistically is pretty low. That's just my opinion. But also, this problem around malvertising, which is a malicious advertisement that has a JavaScript or other code embedded in it, has risen 325% in the month of August this year. So, that's another part of the problem, and we're going to get back to malvertising a little bit more and how it fits into this picture as well.
That's a pretty cool portmanteau. Did you come up with it, or is that
What's
industry? Malvertising.
Malvertising, yeah. It's that's industry, security industry, yeah. So, malvertising is kind of leading to this internet pandemic, so to speak, where we're seeing 1.3 million malicious ads being viewed every day. The probability of getting infected from malvertisements is twice as likely on a weekend. So, I'm out there surfing the web on the weekend, probably a lot more than I am at work when I'm actually doing work. So it seems like this is, or at least I should be, right? But it seems like it appears that these ads are really targeting peak browsing times. So where this really comes into impact for companies is that, you know, a lot of companies don't host their own content anymore, right? They have third-party content up there. Just look no further than foxnews.com or CNN.com or MSNBC to see an ad frame hosted by a third-party site who also hosts ads for yet another party. And we kind of get this concatenating or waterfall effect of advertisement material that ends up on a site that by itself would be perfectly legitimate, but these advertisements haven't been vetted and they haven't been screened, and so now all of a sudden you've got a malicious script on a legitimate site. And so Google started scanning a lot of sites, and you may have noticed, like in your search results, it says this site may be infected, like underneath the search results. And I don't really have I don't think I have a screenshot of this. Actually, I do later in my presentation. I just added it in. But Google started scanning for these kinds of scripts, right? And so your site, you know, might be like perfectly legit, but then all of a sudden on Google it shows up and it says this site may contain malicious material, and that's because the Google robots have picked up on the fact that there's some scripts there that could cause some harm. So here's some case study information. So of our, you know, approximately 200 to 300 customers, we're still seeing one per month across the entire customer base over the past year come down with a Cryptolocker infection. And you know, the past calendar year, or sorry, past 12 months, that is. And then so in 2015, we've seen 5 cases alone. And the healthcare industry comprised about 46% of that, but don't be fooled by this, because this approximately reflects an even distribution of the number of companies per vertical that we have. So every industry is seemingly being affected uniformly. It's not, you know, the finance industry or manufacturing that's being targeted. And I'm going to circle back to why that's important a little bit later, because, well, I'll just circle back a little bit later about why that's important. So what's motivating these people, right? What do you guys think it is?
Money.
Money, right?
Big money.
Big money in this. A single instance has made over $250,000, and over $1 million has been paid out in ransoms. Yeah.
Have you seen the statistics on tens of millions reaped from this?
So the most recent statistics I've seen, I'm going to get to that in a couple slides, and these numbers have gone up significantly, and I think they'll continue to go up too, especially with some of the changes that came out this week. So, you know, they want information, but most of all, it's just easy because there's a lack of awareness and there's a lack of good practices, right? So, just survey. How many of you guys can say, you know, either in your home computer or at work, you know for certain that you've got some protections in place to protect against this kind of threat in your environment? So pretty small number, you know, and so I'm going to get to prevention a little bit later in this presentation, and I think that just in this room kind of speaks to, you know, we just don't have that many protections in place. And on my drive over here from Knoxville this morning, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, man, why hasn't Microsoft done something about this? You know, I mean, why do we continue to allow consumers to be exposed to something like this? Why don't we give them better tools to try to combat threats like this? And I've been to a couple interesting conferences lately. One was right here in Nashville. I mean, this is greater Nashville area, but downtown, the Middle Tennessee Information Systems Security Association puts on a conference every year in September called InfoSec Nashville. And this year, one of the keynotes said, we need to raise accountability of companies around secure software development lifecycle, around taking care of the consumer, and this kind of brought me back to that statement, because I think that in a lot of ways, vendors could be doing more to help the consumer. That's my little rant. So I'm gonna move on. Cryptolocker is a threat by many names. So here's a list of different variants and clones. Start off as Cryptolocker, like we're talking about September 13. Went into this whole F family, which included CryptoWall, Torrent Locker, Crypto Defense, Cryptroni, Reviton, Crowdy, which is otherwise referred to as CryptoWall 3. And until this week, most of my research and study on this, and most of what we've seen, has been around CryptoWall 3. But this week we saw a new variant come out called CryptoWall 4. And I'm going to get and talk a little bit about CryptoWall 4, but not very much analysis has been done at all, because the first instance was discovered on Tuesday. So this threat is changing rapidly and advancing, and is continuing to be profitable, continuing to mutate, and I think we're going to see a lot come out of this in the next couple of years. So, Crowdy CryptoWall 3 encrypts files, displays a ransom or lock screen. Here's a list of antivirus products that pick up on this, and most of this detection takes place after the encryption action's been done. So, at that point, you're kind of, SOL if you haven't put some kind of mitigations or protections into place. We're going to come back to that too. So here's a little eye chart. You're asking about millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions here. So 325 million estimated damages from CryptoWall 3 estimated across the globe. Hundreds of command and control URLs, a handful of second-tier IP addresses, over 400,000 attempted infections, and 4,000 different malware samples. So, just looking at this, guys, what are some of your immediate observations about CryptoWall 3? What do these stats tell you?
A question on the 4,046 malware samples. Does that mean it's polymorphic, where it's never unique when it's analyzed?
Yeah, so I took this to mean that there were 4,000 unique samples of code. So yeah, somewhat not polymorphic by strict definition, in that it mutates itself, but that many different versions have been produced, right? And so that was what I got out of this statistic. And then going back into the 5 IP addresses, to me that tells me there's only a handful of actual physical servers that these go back to, right? Even though we've got hundreds of command and control URLs. So I think the number of actors, based on the analysis I've seen, is pretty small. So just
Drone them.
Drone them, yeah, right? So
what is the campaign code identifiers refer to?
Right, so the campaign code identifiers refer to different phases of the actual rollout of CryptoWall 3. So the developers, the authors, in their actual, initially they were the ones that were sending out, the authors were the ones who were sending this out. Now they're using third parties to send out CryptoWall, right? And then and of course everybody gets a cut, right, along the way, because you're part of the CryptoWall infrastructure, right? Yeah, the pyramid scheme, right? So the campaign code identifiers refer to actual campaigns like Operation, XYZ, and those are different phases of campaigns of their attacks that they're using in their code. that Cyber Threat Alliance was able to recover from the actual executables and emails that have gone out. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this as we move through, but I want to keep moving along here. So CryptoWall version 4 is similar, encrypts file names and the type. So what I mean by that, and this may be a little bit hard to see for some of you guys in the back, but right here, so the file name is turned to gibberish, right? Well, say you you've got your key and you want to just try to recover one file. They've also taken it another step further now and encrypted the file name. So has anyone ever heard of a 2AECN file? Not me. So
they just make it harder for
they've
victims.
gone and obfuscated the actual file types as well by encrypting.
And the purpose is to make the files more difficult for victims to actually know what's been lost, right?
Right. Well, all right. So the purpose, based on the guys who are doing the boots on the ground analysis of this stuff, has been from their observations been determined to be just to frustrate the user. So there's this part right here, but then there's also this part down here at the bottom where the encrypting of the file types, then down here at the bottom too. You become a part of large community crypto wall.
Yes.
So the arrogance and the taunting that's coming across in this most recent version has just been kind of attributed to, we just want to frustrate these people as much as possible, right? So total jerk move.
I hear that community has to run members only jackets.
Members only jackets, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Handshakes.
All right, so here's some other trends. Ransomware is, now using remote desktop to spread itself. RDP protocol, XMPP for communication, Tor switchers to, hide Tor exit node IP addresses, sandbox awareness, browser variants, mobile variants. So, have you guys heard of Browser Locker? Is out there now. There's a mobile locker that's out there now. And so it's just some different trends that are seen. Yeah.
Aaron, you're scaring me to death. How does ransomware use remote desktop? Please tell me.
All right. So I don't have too much time to talk about that. There's in my slides. There's a link. This is actually a link right here, so you can go and read all about it. It's off of SC Magazine. You can probably Google for it if you want to. But basically, the ransomware is looking for open RDP connections, attempting, default vendor hardware, username and passwords, trying to, act somewhat like a worm, right, and proliferate itself. And we're talking a little bit more some of the aggressive behaviors that CryptoLocker, CryptoWall exhibits too. So how do you get it? That we kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, but phishing is obviously the #1 vector, followed by exploit kits, and then 2% being other. These phishing emails, they usually come across as a .zip or .exe, or a screensaver file that's disguised as a PDF or a doc file. So, how many people take resume submissions by email at their company?
We don't hire people.
Stop doing it. Stop doing it. Because it's really easy for someone to just disguise their CryptoLocker exe as something else. And by and far, these executables are screensavers that are disguised as a doc or disguised as a PDF. And then by default in Windows 8, it doesn't show you the file extensions, right? So you think you're looking at a file extension, you double click on it, you're running as local admin. Now your user profile, every user profile on your desktop has CryptoLocker, and then we'll get into some more spreading from there. here's kind of a little eye chart of what the phishing email looks like. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I had one I wanted to add just that for you with Cryptolocker 4. As
Yeah.
new as it is, there is a new vector there. The operators are now taking two popular scams and smashing them together. We saw yesterday somebody who got into one of the dial-up scams, like, hey, I'm your tech support guy. They got them to the point where they said, well, hey, you need to pay us however much money to fix your problem. That's the point where when our poor unfortunate corporate user said, no, thank you. So they crypto-lockered him on the spot.
Wow. Huh. So he didn't respond to the remote desktop support scam. And so how did he crypto-locker them? Like what did they do? They just
I
delivered
haven't had the full report
executable?
since I've been working remote.
Okay.
You know, I just saw what these guys worked
Yeah.
on and filed end of business yesterday. So
Wow. Yeah, I want to hear more about that when you know more.
absolutely.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
So yeah. Oh, and I also heard a couple weeks ago I read that the the remote desktop support scam. How many of you guys are not familiar with that scam? Where they, Windows guys for a while.
I
they're
have Windows
getting-
tech support.
Yeah. Just click this, pay me money to fix your computer. I do nothing for you and take your money. Now, that's moved over into the Mac space this month. So Mac users are being targeted for that too. Yeah.
With the hiding of the last three letters of the extension, is it that they have two extensions, like .pdf
Yes.
and then .exe, and so it
Yes.
hides the .exe and you think it's a PDF?
Yes.
Yeah. The actual file name would be like resume.doc, and then but the real extension that's not
.com or
shown is
.exe?
.scr. Yeah.
SCR.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, because by default Windows doesn't show you the file types, the
If you
file
turn on
extensions.
show all file types, would
Yes.
Yes, but I don't know if that's true in Outlook or not. I think in Outlook, you have to hover over the file, and then in the lower left-hand corner, it will show you it'll read the actual file name. But-
I'm sorry, I have no faith. We could turn on extensions, we could put big red signs that say, don't click here.
Yeah.
They'll still click here.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna get into that too.
Take their mouse away.
All right, I've got to speed through. Here's a little bit about the process. So, and even with the malware checking to see if it's virtualized or if there's security products present. So those guys who intentionally infected machines with Cryptolocker in the past, how many of those were in a virtualized environment? Like VirtualBox, VMware Player. Okay, so just one. So this might be the part of that. Why, you may or may not have been able to infect a virtual machine with Cryptolocker because it's sandbox aware.
Okay, never mind.
Sandbox aware. Yeah. All right, I got to keep going. I'm sorry, guys. I want to get you to the protection part of this presentation. We're a little behind, so I apologize. Exploit kits like Angler, Magnitude, Neutrino, Rig, they're used to develop these malicious scripts and put into malvertisements, to put into iframes on websites. Drive-by downloads like this, and this comes from Microsoft, so they're aware of what's going on. But embedded iframe loads another page that redirects. If the exploit succeeds, then it downloads the malware, and then the process starts there, right? So sometimes browsing the web can be bad for your health. Happy clicker syndrome, otherwise known as happy clicker syndrome. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This site may be hacked right here. Maybe hacked. Let's check it out. So here's the iframe right here with the exploit kit code embedded in it, right? So the Angler exploit kit was used here to do that, to insert that. So again, malvertisement's the silent killer, man, because you're just out there, happy clicker, click, 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 Cryptolocker. Please keep it G-rated. All right. So, what's the problem here? It's a complex advertising economy has created this need for, or this, this market for malicious actors to be able to just, abuse that environment, abuse the system, and get away with it, right? So what do we have to do? Again, I come back to this corporate accountability, accountability of vendors and companies by consumers to work together, use partnerships. I mean, how many of you guys are Microsoft partners out there, at your job? How many of you guys are partners with any kind of vendor at all? So those partnerships can be leveraged to say, hey, we want you to address these issues. And so, kind of going back to what I was thinking about on my drive over here, one of my plans is to try to bring that up, the next time we're talking to our Microsoft guys. Hey, what about this? What are you guys doing in this area? So some specifics on file system mods. Saves itself with a random name based on a hash value. That creates an auto start entry in the system to gain a foothold that works even in safe mode. Interestingly enough, and that hacks the exe, hijacks the exe extension so they can delete shadow volume copies, and that's what's used to conduct a system restore in Windows. So if you create a restore point and then you want to go back, if you don't have any shadow volume copies, then you go back to nothing, basically. The restore is just going to fail. So it downloads the encryption key, encrypts files, and then demands a ransom. So here's a little PCAP that shows the traffic. How many of you guys are PCAP junkies out there? PCAP junkies? I love PCAPs. I wish I just had time to do PCAPs like all day long, but I don't. So, but here's a little bit in the traffic, and we can see that the very first thing that it does is check what's my public IP address, right? And so that's something that we can alert on, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But then this traffic that comes through here is more of the conversation that takes place between the infected client and the server infrastructure. Yes?
So you made a point about the first thing it does is checks public IP. So has any encryption happened yet? If it hasn't, then you're alluding to the fact that we could script some way to stop it right there.
The answer is, at the time it checks for public IP address, no.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's non-encrypted or it is encrypted?
It is not started encrypting yet, because it has to receive a confirmation from the PKI server before. So, getting into the keys a little bit. So, how many of you guys are familiar with public key infrastructure, private, public certificates? Okay, sweet, awesome. So, normally in PKI, your private keys are on your client machine, right? And the public keys are up on a server where other people can verify them and verify, what you sent using the private key, right, came from you. Well, in this infrastructure, it's reversed. So the private keys are on the command and control server, and the public keys are on your client machine. And where that becomes a problem is what you're really paying for is to get your private key for the decryption software, right, from the C2 server. So what I'm looking for when I'm looking at this is for the ransomware authors to make a mistake sometime down the road and get too generous and send the private key. And a mechanism to be able to capture the private key. So, and then to be able to hijack that and try to do the decryption even though they don't authorize it.
Is key generation done on the local system or is it done at the PKI server?
Good question. So, let's see, I'm trying to remember here. I don't remember. I have to go back and check. But I believe that it is done on the command and control server
I'm thinking it almost has
because
to be, because if you
the private key the key set is generated there because the private key is retained by the private key is not transmitted between the client and the server, so it has to be generated on the command and control server by process of elimination. And I don't think that was specifically spelled out in the threat alliance report. But for a really in-depth analysis, this report, I'm looking for it real quick. This Cyber Threat Alliance CryptoWall report right here. It's a 54-page report on CryptoWall 3. It's got a lot more detail than what I can cover here. But, all right, so how does the infection work? Or what can we do about this? How can we detect it? How can we prevent it? How can we remediate it, right? I think we all recognize this is a problem we need to do something about. You know, for most people, detection starts with the screen. They see the splash screen, congratulations, you've been infected by CryptoWall. For some, it might be their SIM solution, Security Information Event Management. Others might be local files being inaccessible, server files being inaccessible. But in the SIM solution, you know, here's an example from Security Onion, and we talked about earlier about IP check against IP address, and you know, so this is throwing a Security Onion alert against that trigger, emerging threat trigger. So, how many of you guys have heard of Security Onion? Okay, so if you haven't heard of it, it's worth checking out. You know, and maybe look at implementing it for you know, a use case like this. Here's a screenshot of the screen if you guys haven't seen it before. This is what pops up after the encryption action is done and says, you know, hey, give me $500, you know, or give me, depending on what the value of Bitcoin is, it could be more.
$230.
Yeah. And this number seems to keep going up. You know, first it started with 100, then it was 300, then it was 500, and of course it's timed. And there's a threat to destroy the private encryption key if you don't pay. And if you don't pay during the first time period and you decide you want to try to pay after that, then the price doubles.
Now, there is a little support button you can click on to send them a message. I have sent some wonderful messages. Very articulate.
All right, so, you know, log management can be used to detect some of this activity, and as well as monitoring correlation services. Even anomaly detection can be used to detect the malware attempting to contact the malicious remote host, like the phone home contact. We talked about some of those Security Onion type of alerts there. This is a list of the local ransom note files, and interestingly enough, these have changed in CryptoWall version 4. So it's now like help your computer files, or help your files, or something like that, which is, I think, another way of trying to throw people who have been studying this and trying to figure out how to detect and prevent against it, but also a way to, I think, taunt the user, another arrogant and, you know, taunting move against the user. So you know, we can alert on these files right here using like a Windows file screen audit rule, and then shut down the system until the network is disconnected. And that's been successful. That strategy has been successful in some instances because in some versions of Cryptolocker or CryptoWall, the machine has to maintain a network connection in order to finish the encryption action. And I'm not exactly sure all of the specifics of that, but you can see this source right here for more information on that specifically. Here's some Microsoft recommendations on file servers, like scanning using PowerShell scripts. Any PowerShell junkies out there, PowerShell users? PowerShell seems to be like one of the up-and-coming languages for Active Directory, domain, you know, administration. I personally am pretty intrigued with the way that Microsoft is making changes between PowerShell in Windows 8 and Windows 10. They're putting a lot more protection into place around administrative actions and what you can do with PowerShell in Windows 10. And some of that's a result of things like the golden ticket attack and Mimikatz. And if you guys haven't heard of either one of those attacks and you're interested in PowerShell or you're in an Active Directory environment, it's worth a Google, I guarantee you. Windows file screen management with an auto rule, and then and these are important because variants of Cryptolocker have gone undetected for up to 5 days. And so, when you're looking at incremental backups and kind of, cascading backups, or incremental backups, and then you do a full backup, and that Cryptolocker infection spills over into your full backup, and then your incremental backups roll off, you're SOL at that point in time, right? Because you now your backups are all infected with Cryptolocker as well. So your go-to for getting my files back is no longer an option. So scan your file servers because you don't want that to happen to you. All right, so here's some what I call old school security methods for prevention. And these are the reason I put the slide originally I had it said what won't protect you, old school security. And what I meant by that was it won't protect you completely, right? Because each one of these things on here has a limited use case. So not running as local admin provides some protection, but only for others' data, because Cryptolocker looks for any file path it can write to. Physical file path, map network drive, any UNC path you've ever connected to that's still in registry, and that scope is expanding now. Like we talked about remote desktop connections, XMPP, and then there's some speculation about Cryptolocker, CryptoWall 4 becoming even more aggressive than that and trying to spread in some other ways too. So, without getting into too much about that, running as local admin does limit the scope, or running as local admin increases the scope of the infection, so you can end up, infecting other local user files. User account controls, that doesn't apply to app data, which is where the Cryptolocker executable runs from. So, that only provides limited protection. We'll get back to app data in a little bit. And antivirus does provide some protection. So we talked about antivirus a little bit earlier, picking up after the infection has taken foot. Some antivirus is now using what's called domain generation algorithms, or DGA, to detect DNS queries against generated domain names, right? So it's picking up and saying, okay, hey, this web query is not something a user would type into a browser. And then blocking that content initially until, like in a quarantine, typical antivirus quarantine fashion. So, and that's shown to be effective as an early mitigation method. Here's some more prevention recommendations from Microsoft. So there's some general stuff over on the right here on security practices, and then more specific stuff on the left. The stuff on the right here is kind of like the thing that you've heard your security guys, preach for years, like user awareness training, least user privilege, patching, and using firewall, understanding how malware works, things like that. But on the left, Microsoft is saying don't pay the ransom, which is interesting because 2 weeks ago the FBI came out and said just pay the ransom. Because we don't really, because it's really effective, and we don't feel like you have a good bet at getting your data back any other way.
So we do negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, so we do negotiate with terrorists apparently. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, like, what is their cut?
Who had a question? I heard someone say a question. No? All right. So don't fund terrorism, don't pay the ransom, fight the man. Particularly, regular offline backups and restore points are the way to go. And always, always, always re-image or rebuild from scratch. Reinstall, format the drive, reinstall, rebuild from a gold image. And well, I'll talk about what happens if you don't a little bit later. But running antivirus, using Microsoft Active Protection Service if you're part of the Microsoft threat ecosystem, and then preventing spam is also important. DNS reputation web service like OpenDNS. Anybody use OpenDNS here? It's a great service. You need to check it out for home and work. Right here in the middle is where I think the most value is. And I'm going to move through this kind of quickly. So if you guys can hold your questions till the end, because I'm sorry, but we're really crunched on time.
Got about 7 minutes.
So yeah. So right here, software restriction policies. Anybody here running software restriction policies in your environment? This is gold. Okay, this is like the barbed wire at the fence. The first line of defense, I think, against, in my opinion, against this threat. So check out software restriction policies for your AD environment. You can push it by a GPO, and that stops the software from running in-app data, and works as a first line defense in Active Directory. These other two down here, the Crypto Prevent and Blade, are great for non-active directory environments, so standalone window boxes or your work groups. So check that out. And then you just can't, I can't overstate the value of incremental backups in this situation. So being able to restore from that. If your Dropbox gets infected, Dropbox saw so many of their customers affected by this, they actually put a button into Dropbox that says restore to previous point, because for a long time they didn't publish out that they could restore you to a previous point. It makes sense, right? Because your data's in the cloud, it's all in enterprise, of course, enterprise storage, of course it's backed up, and they can restore you to a previous point, but that wasn't built into the UI. So they went and put that into the UI. And so you wouldn't have to call tech support and say, hey, roll me back to this point in time. You can just click in there and roll back and sever your synchronization with your local host to get your files back on your Dropbox. So Dropbox for the win. You can attempt to retrieve your keys from these websites like this, like FireEye and Kaspersky. Interestingly enough, last week, 2 more crypto malware rings were taken down, and they put new keys up there. So if you happen to save your encrypted data, you could potentially go upload a file to there and discover that now your key's available and then get your data back. So as a last resort, hang on to your encrypted data on like a hard drive, the offline hard drive or something like that. And because sometime in the future, the crypto ring may get taken down and then you can get your files back later. But Cryptolocker comes with Blackshades remote access tool. How many of you guys have heard of Blackshades? A guy was in the news about 3 weeks ago. He's now doing 12 weeks in prison, or 12 years in prison for spying on women through their webcams using Blackshades remote access tool. Okay, so he got Blackshades, somehow got it on a bunch of these women's computers through like emails or things like that, and he was spying on them through their webcams, and it all came out, and then he got sentenced. So Blackshades is really easy to hide, really hard to remove, and Cryptolocker comes with Trojan downloaders and Blackshades, so play it safe, get your files off of there, what you can, rebuild from gold. That's my recommendation. And again, these slides are going out through the PhreakNIC organizer. So if you guys want to look through these things, it'll all be up there. But early reaction and instant response is essential, and here are some steps that you can take to in early reaction: disconnecting from the network to sever that client-server communication, hard shutdown, mount your hard drive externally where executables can't be run. Use a write blocker if you're paranoid like I am, and then re-image and restore your clean files to that system. Like I mentioned, you can save your files as a last-ditch effort if you're not able to decrypt, and then like I said, law enforcement officers are taking these rings down all the time, and more and more of these keys become public. So I've got a whole list of resources here for you guys that'll go out with the presentation. If you guys have questions, I just want to make a real quick plug for anybody from the Knoxville area who's got an interest in security. The East Tennessee chapter of ISSA, check us out. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I'll take any questions you guys have now or after. Yeah.
When I was thinking earlier, you were plugging OpenDNS, and I'm certainly a huge fan of theirs. Do they have anything in place that's effective in this to help people?
So, since you asked, TechLinks, we are an OpenDNS partner and reseller, and that's not why I put OpenDNS in there. I personally use OpenDNS at home. I have been since it came out in like 2001. But OpenDNS is doing a lot, especially now that they've been acquired by Cisco around threat intelligence. They have a new problem called Investigator, or Investigate, which actually allows you to trace to the malware author's infrastructure or the attacker's infrastructure, their physical whole architecture is reassembled just from DNS queries. So yes, OpenDNS has a ton to offer, especially on the paid premium side of that equation. So, and if you want more info on that, I would just check out OpenDNS's website about that. I'll come back. Yeah.
So you mentioned that in a VM environment, you wouldn't really see a complete infection. If the name of the game is data and just encrypting it and holding up ransom, I administer a bunch of VPSs with a lot of rather important data. Why would they just stop if it's a sandbox unit like a VM? Do you think it actually does anything to a physical hardware layer to where even reformatting a hard drive wouldn't prevent reinfection otherwise?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect that the authors are smart enough to know whether it's enterprise class virtualization or personal class virtualization. So they probably have a way of detecting that the hypervisor is, on a, is licensed or unlicensed, but I can't speak authoritatively on that. So I don't know the answer to that.
I've had it infect in just a localized virtual environment.
Okay.
I know
How long ago was that?
6 months, 9 months ago.
6 months, 6 to 9 months ago. Okay.
Speaking to the previous question, some malware looks at the drivers, like let's say like in a virtual machine,
Yeah.
it looks all open,
Yeah.
like VM
Yeah.
or
Already
guest
followed.
editions if it's open. Or
Yeah.
guest editions,
Yeah.
they look at the drivers.
Not only
to
that,
see
but
what's-
drive paths. Like if you mount a share drive, a host OS share drive on VirtualBox, you'll notice the file path is like VXBox. It's like //VXBox or something like that. So there are other signature. There's other ways to based on strings to detect that.
So my actual question was,
Yeah.
since this is primarily Windows software, especially in an enterprise environment, do you get much protection from using Linux-based file servers? That quarantines the
Protection from using Linux-based file servers. So
Not
no,
on SMB shares.
the SMB shares would still, if they're writable, would still be infectable. Because
It's still gonna infect the data, but it won't infect the actual file server itself.
Right.
it's
Correct.
using the Windows. So So one of the mechanisms by which it infects is it uses the Windows encryption service to go out and encrypt to those shares. So like even if you're running a hardware encryption drive, it'll still encrypt the files within the drive.
Layers.
So it's like encryption inception. Guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. So thanks for listening.